All right, so we're back. We're live. I hope that everybody is doing well here today. Let me see if I can get this picture turned around for me. This camera here. Um, so I want to greet you to come on, Dr. Kimball. How's everything going? Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Y'all
I
can
can
hear
hear
me?
you, Tony.
All right, then we're gonna go ahead and get started. I want to welcome two legends back with me. I have Brother John, and I do John. You can unmute yourself, and I have Brother Kimball with me. He's back from Africa, and I'm looking forward to this opportunity to have him on tonight to just give us um, his analysis. He has a new book out, by the way, so we're gonna talk about his new book too, because I think a lot of times we miss a lot of information in regards to our Black authors. So without further ado, Brother John, I know you said you didn't want to say much. You want to take a step back. But I would like for you, if you don't mind, to go ahead. You could talk to me. Go ahead and tell people who you are. And then I'm definitely going to have Professor to introduce himself. And we're going to get right into this subject matter tonight. Go right ahead, please.
Wow, Tony. Thank you. I'm here as a spectator, but I'm John Solomon, and I'm someone who traveled through the ancient mystery schools more than 30 years. I graduated, as you know, they're chartered and they're unchartered mystery schools. I've attended both, and I've attended mystery schools here in South Africa as well as East Africa. And I know the continent as best as anyone coming from the West, having lived here consistently 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I look forward to hearing Brother Kaba Khomeini. He's someone that is respected here in Africa amongst those that know of his scholarship. And I heard from you that he's got a new book out, and I'm very much interested in purchasing that. And so that's where I am. I'm just as much of a student as you are, Tony, and as Dr. Kaba as well. Yet he's a student that has traveled further than most. So you do have a jewel here with us.
Oh,
And there, say that again, Tony.
I said I certainly believe so.
Oh, absolutely. There's no one that touches the pineal gland like this gentleman here. There's no, Tony, I so proudly told you that there were three states of existence, a solid, liquid, and gas. He's the only one that has come on and said, well, you're forgetting about plasma. I can go on and on about who he is because I've studied his works for more than 15 years.
All right.
And but there are some questions I'd like to ask him in reference to the pineal gland and what happens to us physically if that is shut down. And are there attempts to shut our pineal gland down, and for what reason? There are also questions I have in relations to um, the convergence on the United States of North Africans and West Africans as well as Europeans, and when did they come about? And I'll stylize those questions so that the audience understand why I'm asking, because I'm dealing with something genetic that I would like clarity on from this gentleman. So that's who I am. I'm John Solomon. Thank you, Tony.
All right, Professor, you're up next.
My brother, John, thank you so much for your words and for your support through the years. And to my brother Muhammad, I thank you also, brother, for inviting me to be a part of this program. I've been really looking forward to sharing this knowledge. And as Brother John said, I tell people all the time that the more I learn how much more I have to learn.
Hmm.
For every question that I get answered, 7 more questions appear. And that's what makes life exciting. And that is what the early human beings understood.
Uh-huh.
And my background is education. I've spent 31 years in the New York City Board of Ed. I've taught every grade, I've taught every subject. I've also taught 14 years on the college level. And I purposely did that in order to get to a point where I could understand the inner workings of our children's minds in particular, but our people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've come to realize that young children are actually young adults. And I can see in their formation how they develop their thinking process, particularly here in the United States and what has happened. I believe this is a most exciting time in our history. I realize that a lot of people are looking at various things going on around the world, and I have my concerns also. But out of that chaos will come order. And that is something that I've seen repeated throughout history. And we as a people, as a melanated people, once we understand who we are, what our potential is, and how really phenomenal we are as a people, the quicker we'll be able to get to that point where we will, by nature, just change things. So I'm looking forward to this conversation. And I know we spoke last week and we was getting that energy moving. And I told you I was going to come back just as energetic. So I look forward to the conversation.
Well, first of all, I want to talk about this new book that you got out. I've heard a lot about it. I need for you to kind of go into it a little bit with me in regards to what led you in that direction to write this particular book. And please give us the name of it. If anybody want to get a copy, tell them where they can find it at. But we're going to hit that first, and then we're going to go into your trip to Africa, for which you just returned about a week or so ago. And man, the energy that we had when we was talking was totally off the chain. I want that same energy, like you said before. So go ahead, please tell us about this new book and what led you in that direction.
Okay. And, thank you for that question, brother, because it's most appropriate. Because I tell people that I'm not a writer. I'm really more a curriculum writer. I write lesson plans on how to teach. So I've never seen myself as a writer of books. But because of the nature of what it is that I'm trying to say, I tell people I'm not a writer. I just got something to say, and I need to write a book to tell it to you. And so back in 1976, my mother brought home a Xerox copy of a book titled Stolen Legacy by Dr. George G.M. James. And when I read this book, I got to page 139, which talks about the Memphite theology and the Memphite text. And I've always been interested in astronomy and in the heavens. And I've always tried to figure out the proverb that says, as above, so below. And so in my mind at this particular time, young brother, I was trying to figure out, well, if I could understand the heavens, I could understand the earth. But what do I understand about the earth that will help me understand the heavens? So I promised myself I was going to write the book titled Shabakistan. However, I realized that in talking to our community, because see, Brother Muhammad and Brother John, and also I think Brother Kimball, and
no,
all,
go ahead.
and all those that are listening, I've always understood the importance of being able to identify your audience and speak to your audience. As a teacher of early childhood, 5-year-olds, the way in which I would talk to a 5-year-old as my audience is not the way that I would talk to a high school student, would not be the way I would talk to a college student, would not be the way I would talk to an adult. The concept may be the same, but my manner of speech would be different. So my audience has always been our people. If you can maintain and deal with a 6th grade vocabulary, I'm talking to you. I try to keep my sentences simple, subject, verb, object. I try to stay away from complex sentences. I just try to keep it as straight as possible and as simple. But I realized that because of the nature of Shabakistan, the nature of what I wanted to tell the folk in Shabakistan, I needed to write a book that I call Spirituality Before Religions. This was going to be the base for what I was going to do. This was going to go into the different texts that we see that our Cush Kemetic ancestors wrote, from the Memphite theology to the pyramid text, to the coffin text, to the Book of the Coming Forth Today by Night, the Aten text, and than Shabaka stone. I believe there had to have been an explanation for that, because I wanted to lay out an understanding of what our ancestors were actually saying, because family, it is not difficult. The beautiful thing about our ancestors, the original thinkers, and when I say our original ancestors, I'm talking about the Twa and Mbuti people, Khoisan people of Central and Southern Africa. They are the original human family that came
100.
out of the Homo sapiens sapiens, give or take. And again, I don't get caught up in numbers, because we're going to push back the existence of the human family on Earth a very long time. So it's up to us to do the research to hand back to our children to be able to develop and understand what it is that they have to do. And so spirituality before religions was meant to take our community to the level where they would understand what our ancestors were saying. Nature does not try to trick you. Nature not going to give it to you. You're going to have to work for it. But it's very straightforward and very simple. Nature was our people's first teacher. The Twa and Mbuti Khoisan people, who are derogatorily called pygmies, were the first human beings that came out of Homo sapiens sapien, according to the science that we're looking at right now, Central and Southern Africa. They laid out a way of living. They started as the hunter-gatherers, became fisher people, then they became agriculturalists, and then they became technologists that would then be able to understand how to take science and blend it with a spiritual system. When I say a spiritual system, I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about energy. And so that when you look at the Twa and Mbuti people and what they laid out, they then would lay out a story that would be the Memphite text. Shabaka, a Neset Biti, that's the term that comes to us, which means Pharaoh. Pharaoh is not an African term. Pharaoh is a term that came from the Greek-Roman experience. Neset Biti means the one who has the right to rule. And in the 25th dynasty, Neset Biti, or Pharaoh Shabaka, came upon this document. It was worm-eaten, and he was concerned because it was the work of his ancestors. And what Shabaka said is, I'm going to rewrite this, but I'm going to carve it in stone. And so he carved it on what is called Shabaka's stone. And this is a story of how the cosmic universe came into existence. And so Shabaka stone now takes spirituality before religions to the next level. It shows one thing that is so important for us to understand. And I realize that those who might be very much attached to the religions of today understand what I'm saying, but may not understand it within the context of what I'm saying. And that is that each and every one of us as human beings is the creator having a human experience.
Repeat that one more time.
Each and every human being, male and female, no matter what your cultural background is, when you're looking at it universally, we are the creator having a human experience. And every holy book tells you that. Because if you look at, I grew up Roman Catholic, and I grew up understanding that they said God created each and every one of us in his image. And so when I go into the bathroom and I look into the mirror, I'm looking at my image. So if that is accurate, then each and every one of us is the image of the creator, or the creator, him, herself. Because my mind can't handle a male God only. For every male creator, you must have a female creator. That's just how my mind functions. Because what do women do when they look in the mirror? If we are in the image of the creator, if a woman look in the mirror, she see a man? No, she sees a woman. So the creator is both male and female, unique to the cosmic reality. And this is one of the things I try to get in Shabaka Stone. Now, the other interesting thing about the Shabaka stone, that is where the Abrahamic religions came from. Shabaka stone actually is the Old and New Testament combined. The challenge is, I don't have a problem with any of the scripture. I have a problem with the interpretations of the scripture. Because this past June, I had the chance to get into the pyramid text, into the pyramid of Unas for the first time. Unas was open to us this time. It was never open before. And I got a chance to look at the walls that I had been researching. And on the walls, there actually is where the Christian church got the ceremony that we call the Eucharistic feast. And it's carved on the walls. It's utterance 273 and 274. Now check this out. We think of scripture as writing, but our ancient Cush Kemet ancestors, and please understand, I purposely use the word Cush because the founders of what's called the first dynasty or the Old Kingdom came from the south, and it's recorded. It's recorded in Sudan in a place called Qustal, Qustal, where they found evidence of the pharaonic system in place 300 years before the first dynasty was formed with Narmer-Menes, who was said to be the first Neset Biti or pharaoh. And so when you're looking at this, I automatically say Cush because Egypt as a word really doesn't exist. Egypt is a contamination of the word Aegyptos that the Greeks got. The AI became E, the GU became GY, and the PTOS became PT. So Egypt came from Aegyptos, but Aegyptos was the Greek interpretation of an African word, Hikapata, which means the spirit or the essence of Ptah, who is the creator of creators. That is the essence that created all things by converting energy at rest into energy in motion. And so Shabaka stone, actually, the New Testament really came after the New Testament. The Aten priesthood came out of the Amen priesthood. Amenhotep IV changed his name to Akhenaten. And that is the basis for which we today call the Hebrew faith system. Because the word couldn't have been Jew, his name couldn't have been Jesus, and there could not have been a Judas because the letter J did not exist in our language until the 1500s. So it would have been a Yahweh, it would have been some form of another combination of an H sound or a Y sound that would describe what was going on back in those days. So that Shabaka stone was meant to take us to the level. In none of my writing do I put any religion down because like I say, I respect all faith systems. But the reality of it is that you have to go back to spirituality in order to understand religions. But now from Shabaka stone, I had to take it to the next level because I had to prove and show you scientifically where the creator is on earth. And that is my newest published book titled Carbon Before Melanin. And it's subtitled Creators on Earth.
Now, see, with that particular title, when you say creators here on earth, that's going to go over a whole lot of people's head. That's just going to go like, where's he getting this from? And if they will listen to you beforehand, they can see where you're getting this from. When you say that, when you look in the mirror, you're seeing the image of God, the male part. When the female looks in the mirror, she's seeing the image of God from the female part because both need each other. So go ahead and break down that melanated part for me.
Now, when you look at the symbol of Hapi or the waters of Nun, which is where it is said that all things came from, Nun actually is a man who is pregnant with a lactating breast. And so it shows.
Baphomet.
Say that again.
I said that reminds me of Baphomet.
Okay. That is it. both male and female in one place,
Mm.
existing in one essence, the energy of both male and female energy. Now, in science, we could call that electromagnetism.
Okay.
Electricity is the male energy, and magnetism is a female energy. And the atom that we look at, the atom of science, is the atum or the aten of the ancient world created by the Kushites. And basically what you're dealing with is electricity lives for magnetism and magnetism lives for electricity. Electrical currents create magnetic fields, and magnetic fields create electrical currents. It's science. They live for each other, and when you put the two together, you now have electromagnetism. And so much of who we are manifestations of a system far larger than what we could absolutely understand. When you think like the Western world, first of all, you got to get out your mind that God is a man only. And for a lot of people, that's hard.
That's going to be very difficult.
But the reality of it is that there are more women in the world than there are men. And the science of it is that women have 2 X chromosomes and men have 1 X chromosome and a Y chromosome. Women outnumber men 3 to 1. That's just the way in which the DNA and the chromosomes have worked themselves out on the planet. Makes a lot of sense, Brother Muhammad, because we need to keep the earth populated. So it makes sense that the givers of life would outnumber those that fertilize life. Makes a lot of sense.
This conversation can go so many different ways, but what I want to add to it is ask you the question in regards to being in the temple during this time of year, which is the summer solstice. So if you want to enlighten or give your viewpoint, because you were in the temple at the time of this taking place, if you don't mind.
In every temple that you come upon, and I'm sure Brother John and those that are listening are understand that in every temple there's a holy of holies. When you get into the different religions, there's a sacristy or there is a sanctuary that is very sacred. It is different from other parts of the church, mosque, or synagogue or temple. Okay, it's different. It's a very special place. When we got into Middle Kemet or Middle Egypt, we went to a temple on June 21st that is called the temple at Edfu. Edfu is the second city created by the Kushites in southern Kemet. At midday on June 21st, the longest day of the year, the longest sunlight day of the year, the sun comes in, and for the first time, it shines directly in what's called the Holy of Holies, and it brightens up the entire room that has a solar boat, and it is dedicated to Heru, who is the energy of resurrection. And so we were there on June 21st at the Temple of Edfu in order to recognize this phenomenal feat of being able to build a temple in alignment with the sun at midday on June 21st. Now, we're going back for the winter solstice, and we're going to go to Karnak. Again, in Middle Egypt, Karnak is where the sun does something very similar in the temple in order to help us understand agricultural science. When I went back and talked about the Twa Mbuti people, the short-statured people, this was the knowledge that they brought across the planet. It's hard to believe this because when someone tells a perfect lie, the truth is unbelievable. But Brother Muhammad, there was a time when the only human beings on the earth were black for thousands of years. And it was these Africans that ventured out into the world being impacted by either the lack of sunlight or the presence of sunlight that altered, shaped how they would look physiologically.
Okay.
And then that comes from melanin and the purpose of understanding melanin. Because you see, people may think that the way I speak, that I am excluding them. They say, oh, you're talking about that African thing. But I wouldn't care if you were from Slovakia, Japan. I wouldn't care if you were from France. I wouldn't care if you were from Saudi Arabia. If you traced your family lineage back, every human being would find themselves within the Twa Mbuti Khoisan family, no matter who you are. So it's not that I am excluding you, it's that you're excluding yourself from the family of humanity. And so carbon before melanin, Dr. Sebi, who was an Afro-biomineralist, I had been going to him since 1988. I followed his regimen, and I took his herbs, take his herbs, even to this day. I'm coming up out, because when I went to Kemet, I had to cut out the fasting. Because if you know Dr. Sebi's products, when you start fasting and you start taking Bio 1 and Bio 2, you better be next door to a bathroom. Because his products, nature don't knock, it gang busts you. So you better be close to the bathroom when you're taking his products. And so I knew that going to Kemet, Egypt, was going to be difficult for me. So what I did is I interrupted my fasting, but now I'm fasting now to continue, just cleansing myself seasonally, because I normally do it during the solstices and the equinoxes in particular. And so carbon before melanin, Dr. Sebi and I became friends. And I invited him to come to one of my presentations. This was back in the 90s when I did something on melanin. And when I went back to the Usha Herbal Institute in Brooklyn, I said to him, well, Dr. Sebi, what did you think about my presentation? He said, Booker T. That was my name before I corrected it. He said, you're always talking about melanin, but it was carbon before melanin. He said, you can't understand the melanin molecule if you don't understand the carbon atom.
Mm.
So with that statement, it started me thinking about carbon. And so I titled the book Carbon Before Melanin, Creators on Earth. It's a double entendre, because I use creators with an apostrophe as it relates to creator. It's like a creator is on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And then I say creators as it relates to possessive, which means us. So not only am I saying that the creator is on Earth, I'm saying that you are the creator having a human experience, and it was the assimilation of carbon that created organic life.
Mm.
And so in the book, I go into a lot of different things, but I have an area in the book where I start talking about super sapiens. I start talking about that branch of the human family that has gone beyond Homo sapiens sapiens.
Mm-hmm.
Homo sapien, like basically Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop gives us 6 forms of the human being. Australopithecus robustus, Australopithecus gracile. Then gracile got so smart that it had to break out, and so then they became Homo habilis, human of ability. Homo habilis became Homo erectus. Homo erectus became Homo sapiens. Homo sapiens means thinking human. And then thinking human became Homo sapiens sapiens, which is the creative thinking human. But this creative thinker became a super sapien. In other words, they were able to take the knowledge of being a creative thinker and involve. Okay, after the body got the right size through evolution, arms got right, the brain got right, the heart got right, the kidneys functioned, the liver was okay, the knees bent. Then the human being was meant to involve, which means to return within, to come to realize that each and every one of us is the creator having a human experience. One of the evidences of this is the Freemason. The
I,
the
I'm going to go back before you get. I want to go back because you mentioned something in regards to being in the temple. You said that when the sun at its meridian height, as it reflected into the temple, it reflected upon the holies of holies or the holies of holies. And you said that this usually happens during the winter and summer solstice. Within the Freemason aspect of things, there are two particular days that the Freemasons usually so-called celebrate: winter and summer solstice. However, within the framework of the Western uh, uh, Masonic bodies, the Western European style of Freemasonry, they usually call it St. John's Day, St. John the Baptist, St. John the Evangelist, which brings in a religion aspect where in the beginning it was not there. It was more a reflection of the spirit of the man. One in the summer solstice and one in the winter, because in the summer everything springs to life, everything is lively. Whereas as you begin to go into the winter, everything dies out. So when we see that as Masons, and as you was beginning to reflect upon that, I just wanted to touch on that because a lot of us Masons, African American Masons, we want to end up on church. We want to go to church on those days. When I think is more to it than that. So I just want to just chime in on that. But go ahead, sir. Thank you.
well, no, but my brother, what you're saying is absolutely correct, because I believe that spirituality gave birth to religions. And so that when you have a summer solstice, which means a solstice is stand still.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in the summer solstice, well, equinoxes means that the days and nights are equal.
Okay.
So at the spring equinox, from the spring equinox to the summer solstice, all the days, the sun's appearance got longer every day, sometimes by seconds, sometimes by minutes. By the
Right.
time you get to the summer solstice, the sun stands still. And then now every day is getting shorter by seconds or by minutes every day. When we get to the autumnal equinox, it's going to be equal days and nights.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, every day is going to get shorter until you get to the winter solstice. So think of the metaphor of the sun, each and every one of us, growing to a level of the highest point where we are exuberant from the great majority of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And then think of the opposite, where we recoil in and we are the shortest in terms of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And think of resurrection, because every religion, every system from agnostic to Zoroastrian is focused on the salvation of the soul and the evidence of the human being. It is a wonderful, beautiful story. Having grown up Roman Catholic and understanding Roman Catholicism, and then going deep inside what our ancestors were actually telling us from where Roman Catholicism came from. Because you can see what particularly the Egyptian Coptics did in the temples.
Mm-hmm.
They crossed out all the ankhs and they would make crosses.
Really?
Yeah, they did a lot of damage in a lot of the temples because that's when the Christians took over. And
So
basically,
so what I'm hearing you say is that before the cross, as we know it, was there was always the Ankh. The Ankh was always present.
I can take you a step further than that. The cross always existed in the Kush Kemet.
Oh, okay.
Basically, the cross really, when you deal with the cross and you deal with what's called Passover, okay, in the beginning, it really was a cross with a circle in the middle. And that is
Okay.
because the sun passed over. And the evidence of that is I ask a question. Okay, we know that Jesus the Christ was born on December 25th. The
Mm-hmm.
day of the week may change, but the date always remains the same.
Mm.
We know that he died on Good Friday. But why does that date always change? Because I mean, if you were born, that's a certain day. The day
Right.
of the week may change, but the date remains the same. Why does the date of Jesus the Christ crucifixion change? And that is because of the movement. And why is there a relationship between Roman Catholicism and the Jewish Passover? And that is because one came out of the other, because the sun is crucified
Mm.
in the constellation known as Crux, which is the cross. So
Okay.
when I said that the early Christians in Egypt carved out the Ankh, it's not so much that the Cushites didn't have the cross. They have cross. There's crosses carved on the walls of Kemet.
Mm-hmm.
But what the Christians did is that they took the metaphor for the crossing over or the passing over of the sun in the heavens, which basically is dealing with the celebration of the time that we call spring, which is rebirth.
Right. Right.
And so many times we get religious. The 40 days and the 40 nights, that's all numerology there.
Mm.
You know, this is why it's 40 days is Mardi Gras, and that changes every year. Mardi Gras means Great Tuesday. Mardi Gras. Mardi is Tuesday, and Gras is great. And then the next day in the Catholic Church, you have what's called Lent, you know, where you have Ash Wednesday.
Uh-huh.
And from that day on, for 40 days, that is going to determine when Easter Sunday is going to be. And then after Easter Sunday, you have 40 days and 40 nights before the ascension of Jesus Christ into the heavens. That has everything to do with the sun. It has nothing to do with a human being. The sun actually is going through a metamorphosis over a period of 80 days in the heavens. It's just science. You know, I mean, I know people don't like to hear this because I understand how Christianity helped us through the worst part of our existence in America. I have a lot of respect for Christianity. But so many of our people on the plantation who went through the Ma'afa, the terroristic disaster, I could only imagine that hearing this story of Jesus the Christ gave them hope. And in that hope, they lived the next day.
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't have that hope, no matter where it may be, if they didn't have that hope, some of them might not have wanted to continue. And many of us would not be here today. So I bless Christianity for being that essence of thought process that allowed us to be able to move. But I got to also say that when the spiritual system no longer meets your needs and solves your problems, it's like carrying the boat on your back after you cross the river. The boat got you across the river. That's a good thing. But if you carry it on your back, it becomes a burden.
That it does. That is does. That is does. So while you was there in the temple, my question now is that you was going to touch on Freemasons. You was getting ready to break some things down. Did you see any symbols in regards to the Masonic order as it is, the compass square, any of that that you come across when you was there?
You come across images and stories of where all of this comes from, be it a compass, like for instance, the idea of being a mason, being a builder. You know, you can go back to Imhotep, who was one of the original masons when you stop and think about it. And the word mason means son. Mason is son. This is where the word Mez comes from. Moses comes from this. You got Thutmoses, Ra Moses. They took the O out of Ra Moses, and now we call him Ramses.
Mm.
You have Thutmoses, you have Akmose. So all of these words with Mose at the end is really son of Ra, son of Thoth, son of. And so when you're dealing with Freemason, see, what Western world did is that they took Frey, P-H-R-E, and they turned it into F-R-E-E. But in reality, Freemason means son of the sun. Frey is the sun, Phre. And it even came from the Greeks, because Frey and per a or per a comes from the Greeks.
Okay.
When you have Freemason, it really means son of the sun, which is when you went into the Egyptian temple, you started off as an initiate. When you reached a certain level in your existence in the school, you became an apprentice. When you became an apprentice, you assigned yourself to an elder who would take you through the process. So if you happen to be a person that charted the heavens, astronomy, then you attached yourself to one of the elders who was an astronomer. If you were a mason, you attached yourself to somebody that was a mason. That was the apprentice level.
Uh-huh.
And when you got to that highest level, which is like the person that you were attached to, then you became a son of light. And that's Freemason, is son of light. Light meaning sun, the light of the sun, the light, heat, and sound energy of the sun.
So why do you think now, for those African Americans who are now Masons, why do you think it's so difficult for us to see it from that point of view as we go through these ritualistic ceremonies and all that comes with it? Why is it so far-fetched to understand or to even get a glimpse and say that Africa has played a part, instead of saying, well, okay, Freemasons came from England, instead of looking at the totality of the whole instead of a small sum?
I believe that the entire system of study got into Europe through the Africans that went in 7-Eleven. They brought the study of it. The Europeans that studied at the feet of these black men and women became who's known as the Illuminati, the illumined ones. That's what the word means. It's not a bad word. It just means that you're illumined, that you have that knowledge, you have that wisdom, that you are the son of light, that you represent. And it's not a SON of light, it's the SUN of the light, heat, and sound energy that comes. You are one with nature. And like most things, like religions that came from us as African people, we got it back, and the interpretation of it is based in Western thought. So that for me, Brother Muhammad, and to the family that's on board with us, my concept is that when you're dealing with the situation that we're facing, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop teaches us that when someone wishes to oppress you, and by that, I'm not necessarily talking about a culture, I'm talking about anybody that wants to oppress another person, he says they'll take three things from you. They'll take your history, they'll take your language, and they'll take your psychological factor. Dr. Leonard Jeffries tells us that your psychological factor are what we call the VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. And when they take your history, your language, your values, interests, and principles, they then superimpose their history, their language, and their values, interests, and principles on you. So that no matter what decision you come to, it will never be in your favor, because you're looking at the world through someone else's eyes. And I think, like all things, like Christianity, how could we actually think that God is white? How could we actually believe that the God that created me don't look like me? How could I believe that when scripture tells me that he created us in his image, that I'm a black man, melanated, looking in a mirror, and I see a white man? How could that be? How psychologically? What value, interest, and principles did you take from me that I could come to that conclusion? And then we wonder why we put guns to each other's heads, and why we do the pain to each other, why brothers and sisters can't get along in a dynastic relationship. What makes that happen? We're not looking at the world through our eyes. And so whatever it may be it Christianity, be it democracy, democratia means people power. Republica means for the people. Democrats and Republicans are so far away from that concept.
Wow.
And the evidence of it is the Electoral College. This is not a democracy that we're living. This is a republic. We say it every day. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic. And that republic is what created the Electoral College, because the founders of this nation that everyone wants to claim, they wanted to make sure that wealthy white men would always be in control. So they created an Electoral College. And by the way, when they did that 3/5 of a man thing, that had nothing to do with black people. That 3/5 of a man thing had to do with rich white landowners. That when they were counting their possessions, like the cattle, you got votes according to your material wealth. So when they 3/5 of a human, they weren't saying we were 3/5 of a human. They said that our white enslavers would get credit for every 5 black people on his plantation. He got 3 votes.
It's all about power.
That's but still even to this day. Isn't that where we're headed back right now?
Yeah, it's all about power. It's all about power.
That's it. You know? But see, I got news for them, Brother Muhammad. Might don't make right. Right makes might. And don't ever forget that. Because in the Western civilization, for as long as they've existed and been in power, Indo-Europeans, not one civilization lasted more than 500 years.
That's a lot being said.
I can take you back to the Persians that went into Egypt in 525. By 332, the Greeks were in there. That's a little over 181 years. By 30 BC, the Romans was in there. That's a little over 300 and something years. The Roman civilization lasted until about 426, and then that fell. And then Europe went into darkness. They didn't come back out of darkness until 711, when Africans crossed over into Spain and brought civilization and culture. The first thing they brought in was soap. And then they brought in spiritual water known as alcohol, which today we call alcohol, because they said after you wash your funky butt, you're going to have to disinfect it.
Right.
Africans brought that in. So from 1492, when Castile and Aragon finally came back in and kicked out Boabdil out of Granada, from 1492 to this day, and this Dolly House is falling right now. This is the fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
It's falling as we speak. It's falling. And every one of them, Brother Muhammad, fell for the same exact reason. Because there was people power. The government wasn't for the people. It was for the rich people, not for the people. No civilization can exist if people don't have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That says a lot right there. That says a lot. And just that comment alone, as we look at America, as we look at the totality of this conversation, this whole thing, and especially on that journey, I mean, you being there, and now you're saying you're going to go back here probably during the wintertime. How often do you get the opportunity, or do you go back to the continent?
Well, I hadn't been back to Kemet since 1987.
Okay.
This was my first time back because, I had a wife and family.
Right.
I ain't got no money. I'm a teacher. Teachers don't make money that you can go on. It's just the way it is. And I always had a rule. My own rule is that I never made my family have to suffer for me being able to go out and do certain things. For me to be able to go out and travel meant $3,000, maybe $4,000. Okay, that's months of rent, food on the table, clothes for the children, things that my wife might have needed. So I never got a chance But now things are much better. And the brother that was the co-host of it, who I'll be speaking to within maybe another 10 minutes, he was very cordial and very generous as it relates to feeling that he wanted me to be on this tour with him and with the 61 people that we brought. We brought people from around the world to Kush Kemet from, I went June 10th, and we did a number of things from June 10th to the 15th. The tour began on the 16th and it ended on the 28th.
Okay.
So I have not had a chance to do a lot of, but I've done a lot of research.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my research that I was able to bring, and folk that came could benefit from what I've studied, the books that I've written, the years of teaching children. I was a young teacher the last time I was in Kemet. In fact, the brother that was co-host wasn't born the last time I was in Kemet.
So with all of that knowledge, all of that illuminating knowledge and information that you had, or that you have with you, that when you went there, when you went into the temple, when you got there, how did that come into play?
Oh, brother, let me tell you something. You talk about being illumined. I was nowhere near possessing the amount of knowledge in 87 that I went back into that temple. When I looked up on the ceiling and I saw the stars of 1,000,000 years, when I looked at what our ancestors carved on those walls, I came to realize their neurons were connected differently than the way our neurons are connected in our brain.
Okay.
Differently.
Yes, sir.
They thought differently. They had, this is what I mean by super sapiens. They had gone beyond just a creative thinking person. And now that I am at my age where I am now, as opposed to being that young brother in 87, I just marveled at how their brain. I would like to talk to one of them just to see how we could arrange a conversation. I just want to see how that could work. I just want to know, like, what made you think of that? How is your neurons connected that you could come up with something like this? That you could create a temple, Karnak in particular. Karnak is so big you could fit every cathedral in the world and still have room. And then Karnak was connected to, Karnak is called the Ipet Sut, which is the holiest of place. There was an avenue of sphinxes that connected Karnak, or the Ipet Sut, to the Ipet, which is the Grand Lodge of Luxor. And I just tried to imagine what one of their processions must have looked like when they took Amun from Karnak and marched in procession, all the different color robes that they had, the people, the way in which they walked, and the community watching this going on. Talk about a parade. My goodness. So to answer your question, brother, see, I'm getting energized by just remembering how I felt in June, going back after the first time after all these years. Knowing what I know now and looking at what they did, brother, it's just another way of thinking. They didn't have to worry about if they were going to eat. They didn't have to worry about if they had to pay the rent. They weren't worried about their own safety. They weren't worried about if their children were safe. It is hard to believe that we lived during a time when we were safe. And our minds then were open to be able to think. That's how their neurons were connected. Okay, they were safe. The level of crime for most of the time didn't exist. The brotherhood and sisterhood was right there. Men and women were equal. One wasn't in front or the back or above or below. They walked side by side. And as a black man, when you have a good black woman, see, the way we called our sisters back then, We call them Hemet Neset Waret. Hemet Neset Waret, Hemetnessetwaret, and it means the deep well of water that I return to when I'm parched by the desert. It's a metaphor. And you know, you have to be in the desert to understand what parched is. We ain't talking about thirsty.
Talking about parched.
We talking about parched. We talking about the dust be popping out your mouth when you talk. Okay.
Right.
And when you're parched by the desert, there's only one thing you want. There's only one thing that will help you, and that's water.
Yep.
Or that's all on your mind. You even mirages thinking that there's water there. Think about how we as brothers thought about our women. Not only was she water, not only was she a well, she was a deep well of water.
Whoa.
Do you know what you can build with that type of relationship with a black woman that loves you as much as you love her? We got to get back there. We have to understand this and not be impacted by the Western civilization, who intrinsically and extrinsically do not care for their women.
Yeah, I'm going to have you back when you get that time. But definitely, man, on that note, I'm at a loss for words because of the way you just framed. That's something we need to get back into. That's something we need to go gravitate back to, because that is the thing that held us together. That's when you said like parched and she's that water. That's it.
Brother, there is nothing more powerful on the planet organically. The manifestation of organic life is when a black man and a black woman love each other.
It reminds me of that song said when they collide. You know, there was a song talking about when two people like that collide together. It's nothing like it. Absolutely.
In science, it's called nuclear fusion.
Yeah, I can believe that. I can believe that. So yeah, look, Doc,
you can light up a building with that, brother.
Look, I know you are going to be receiving a phone call here pretty soon. I don't want to take you away from that, but I do want to say how much I appreciate your time, and that we have been working on this for a while, and our schedules didn't match, and things kept interfering. But I just want to say thank you, because listening to you and the role for which I'm on as a Mason to become more illuminated or Illuminati or sun, the giver of light, because I can't take none of this with me. Wherever I'm going, I can't take it with me, but I can definitely leave it for someone else to expound on it and to take it to a higher level and to just be and to even add more light to it. The thing I'm finding within the confines of Freemasonry is that a lot of us are afraid of that. That's what I see. I see a lot of Black Masons are afraid of becoming Illuminati, illuminated per se, excuse me, but illuminated, becoming one who's willing to give forth the knowledge, because knowledge is power, depends on how you take it and use it. I think sometimes some of us are just afraid to even to speak out on the mere fact that we are the creators of this thing we call Freemason, and that we gave it to the world freely, or some may even say stolen, however you want to put it. I just wish that we was able to think rationally and look at it from more of what we are trying to do, and from where we have come from, because we don't know half of the information that was lost in translation from what we have now. And I think it's all watered down. That's why even for myself, I buy books, I read, and I try to just get as much information as possible for me to expound upon when I'm talking to my brothers in our lodges.
Yeah. And you know what's beautiful, brother? You already have it. You already have it. Brother John already has it. I already have it. Our sisters already have it. And I like to round this out by just asking a question. If you can imagine all the lights where you are out, you can't see a thing. And then all of a sudden, you find a light switch. You turn the lights on. And you see the lamps, you see the chairs, you see the paintings on the wall, you see the couch. My question is, did all those things appear in the room when you turned the light on? No, they were always there. Your light just wasn't on.
Mm.
So life is meant to find a light switch of your mind because no one can do it for you.
Man.
You must find that light switch and turn that light on, and you will see that you are the possessor of the cosmic encyclopedia, also known as the Akashic Records. And the only thing that you do when you go to school is someone phrases things in a way that you find out you always knew it.
Mm.
Excare, educe means to draw out. It doesn't mean to put in.
Right.
Everyone that's watching this, there's not a thing that I have said that you did not know prior to you hearing me say it. All I did was facilitate you realizing you always knew it. And that's what I deal with our children. Our children are born with an entire encyclopedia of the cosmos. Everything that has ever happened, everything that is happening, and everything that will ever happen, we were born with that. Just like a woman is born with every egg she'll ever produce. Just like a man is born with every spermatozoon that he will ever produce.
Mm-hmm.
Born with this. All we got to do is find a light switch in our minds and turn it on, and you'll see. You've known this all the while. So as we reach back to the original Freemasons, understand, Imhotep is within us. And if I took you back 20 generations, if I took you back 500 years to the year 1524, and you ask yourself how many ancestors dwell within you, how many direct and indirect ancestors came into existence to bring you into existence? Over the past 500 years, it's 1,048,576 human beings.
That's just for me.
That's just each and every one of us. You have 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 great-great-grandparents. If you went back 500 years, if a generation is 25 years to you, you went back 500 years, how many human beings came into existence for you to be here right now, July 10, 2024? It's 1,048,576 human beings dwell within you. But let me drop the other shoe. I only took you back 500 years. Suppose I took you back 5 million. It's called E to the 3. Exponential expansion equation. 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents. This is math. This is not personal. 1,048,576 people from 1524 to this date came into existence to bring you, Brother Muhammad, to bring Brother John into existence, to bring me into existence, and every other human being. But what happens if you go back 5 million? How many people dwell within you? How many great people live within you? How many wonderful times did you have? How many times of sadness did you have? How many times of great invention did you have? How many great love affairs did you have? Celebrate that and tell the children that no matter what they see out here, it's going to be all right.
It's going to be all right.
Just keep on keeping on because it ain't over till we win.
Likes that. It ain't over till we win. So look, I'm going to wrap this up. I know you got a lot on your schedule. I know a lot is happening, and it's about 12. It's actually 12:30. So your phone call should be coming in right about now.
Well, it's a phone call that I have to make.
Oh, okay.
But brother, let me just tell the community, go to my website, www.kabakamene.com, KABAKAMENE.com. And you'll be able to see where my books are. You'll be able to get a free e-course and study guide on my website. You'll be able to get a sense of what I'm doing. If you go to my Instagram page at Kaba Kamene, you'll be able, I use that as my community bulletin board. You'll get a sense of the work that I'm doing and where I'll be and other things that I think would be of importance to you in terms of following my work. But my brother Muhammad, I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk to our community.
Hey, I want to thank you for allowing me to even just have you on this platform, because of your busy schedule. And it means a lot to me.
Yes. And Brother
And
John, I
I'll
want
be
to
seeing
thank
you
you
soon.
also. Say again.
I said I will be seeing you soon. I'm gonna catch that trip. I'm gonna catch one of them.
Okay, well, let's talk again, brother man, because we got some more things to talk about. It's
Okay,
only that I was expecting to come on at 10:30. Things happened. We couldn't do what we did. So it's
right.
sort of I thought I'd be free by 12:30 if we started at 10:30.
Correct.
But things
Correct.
happened, like all technological things, weren't able to do it. But I'd like to get a rain check where we'll continue this conversation because we got a lot more to talk about, brother.
Certainly. Certainly.
Because this is our time, brother.
No problem. I
Thank
got
you,
you.
Professor. Thank you, Professor. Sorry, Tony. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, brother
And
John.
next time we talk, I would like to ask you a question in reference to the pineal gland. I don't want to go into it at this
Absolutely.
point.
Absolutely.
Thank
Well, we got some things to talk about. We could spend the whole time talking about the pineal gland and the
I
limb.
know.
So that's something that we're going to do real soon. And
Okay.
I'm talking about maybe sometime between this time and, well, let's just say within the month, we're going to do this again to make up for the time that we lost tonight.
Hey,
Hey,
Tony, I want to give you something to support this gentleman in what he said in terms of the origin of man that is so true. You know, the one tribe that Caucasians travel, when they travel to Africa, they go all over Africa. Whenever I travel to Africa from the United States, there are far more Caucasians on the plane going to Africa than Black people. They come here far more than Black Americans do because they understand the reality of Africa. But you know, the one tribe that Caucasians visit most in Africa, of the hundreds of tribes, is the Khoisan people.
Mm.
I was invited to a Caucasian British dude and his woman invited me to their home in Durban, South Africa. You have a heavy Khoisan population in South Africa. And the Khoisan, during this conversation, during this meeting, it wasn't about anything metaphysics or deed. They were trying to get into a threesome. You know, they were doing poppers and things of that nature. But while he was getting high, this Caucasian male, without mentioning any names, he and his wife, he brought up the Khoisan people out of the blue. And he spoke of how they gave birth to all humanity. Now, remember, they're doing poppers and smoking weed too. But for some reason, that was on his mind more so than anything else. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Professor. The Khoisan people, I know them well. They are in abundance in the Western Cape of South Africa, and you know their language. They speak with the click.
Yes, right.
You have the Khoisan, you have the Xhosa. The Xhosa people are very close to the Khoisan. And their language, if you listen to their language, you'll find that it sounds extraterrestrial. But no, I wanna thank you for that mentioning the Khoisan people, because I mentioned the Khoisan people to Tony the very first time I spoke with him. I told him that's where the Asian people come from. And if you go to the Philippines, if you go to Thailand, you'll see they have streets named after Khoisan, Khoisan Boulevard, Khoisan Street, because they know where they come from. And so I just wanted to give you that because that is something I experienced myself, and that's what the world announces. They know it within themselves. Tony, you would never hear a white person speak of the Khoisan, not in the West, and that's why I'm giving you this now. But that's it. And thank you, Professor.
Oh, no doubt. And thank you, Brother John, for that for sharing that information, because that's very important in terms of the research that I'm doing. Because I'm connecting the click language with the beats and hip hop.
Oh, absolutely.
I
And
can see the connection, and I can see the connection between the click language and the way Beethoven played the piano, and the way Oscar Robertson and Thelonious Monk did jazz. I can see a connection through the beat. Not necessarily directly, but indirectly. I listen to click language and I can see the connection between the beats and hip hop. I'm trying to bring the young people in to help them understand you're already doing something that you don't realize you're doing. I may not like the words that you use, but the beats that you create from using those words
are ancient.
Ancient. It's the first language taught to the human family through nature. That's what my research is telling me. More work to be done, and we're going to hand it off to our children to keep on keeping on.
Most definitely, most definitely. So I want to thank both of you for coming on. Thank you, John. Thank you, Professor. And we're going to end this live feed. But man, this has certainly been beautiful. And you know what? We're gonna chop it up some more. So I'm gonna let you finish your business up for this evening, and we'll talk some more. Definitely do that.
Peace, family.
Peace and be well, everyone.
All power to the people.
Oh, definitely all power to the people. Everyone have a good evening, and thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you.
Peace.
Peace.